All right, I'm just in the garage. We're just going to be organizing a little bit. Mostly, probably not get much organizing done because I like talking about stuff. And all right, can I zoom in? Yes, we can. All right, guys, you guys are going to see soon. I'm going to have a short uploaded. I did an experiment with the 1x30 belt sander, trying to see if you can turn this single speed, very high speed belt sander into a variable speed using an old school Variac voltage, variable voltage. Make sure to subscribe because you'll see that the results of that experiment. Let's just say it, kind of. But I'm just organizing this shop back here because I got a bunch of projects I got to work on. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm just organizing the shop. I'm going to be having a video soon on how to build this forge. I have a forge burner build video on my channel. We still use the same forge burner that's sticking into the forge, but the video after the coming build video is going to be on how to turn this into a forced air forge. So this is a forced air forge right now. I can't speak. Forced air forge. So it's turboed. And this way you can save money on propane. So you're actually able to forge weld at 9.5 to 11 psi instead of the 20 psi required using this DIY Venturi burner. So this forge I ain't gonna turn on right now because I can't forge anything because I'm recovering from a surgery, but I don't think I can play any songs because I just got my one phone, and I mean I could sing the song "Some People Suck Dick." That shit's funny as fuck on Instagram. But all right, back to smithing. So this is Stompy, the treadle hammer. So we're able to turn these bottle caps into just coins. But a treadle hammer is useful because you can use top tooling. So I use this little ball peen. People say you don't want to hit a hammer with anything, but as long as it's going to something softer, so like this is copper. Obviously, if I was using steel, the steel would be hot, but you can see the copper is not marked. Now we're going to use the treadle, and it's foot activated. And we have ourselves a little dimple. Now, where this shines is the ability to make bottle openers. So you see this bottle opener, you see that divot right there? Flat. But when you put the hammer, you angle your hammer out, you'll be able to actually switch and pull the material. And this is actually a copper bottle opener. This one that looks identical, except for right here, does not work very well. Because this curve right here is able to fit under. Give me a quick second, grab another beer. But I'm going to open it. It's non-alcoholic. I'm drinking these because I don't need to. So this bottle opener is non-alcoholic rum. If you look closely, it's flat and only grabs on one tooth. Look, the tooth. So if you look, I mean, it kind of do it once, like it won't slip. But when you have it properly run like this, able to lock in better. Like it's not, you can tilt, it's not off. So it's good to know when making mistakes, way you can actually. But I'm not going to do this because I already have one open. Technically, but any I could drink. You got bugs in here. I want to. I brushed the finger, not swell him, but I brushed the finger because I was a little bit impaired, and I meant when I was trying to hot split something and crush my finger, and it's not fun. One of the things I'm working on. So I built this hammer, and I like the fact that I basically made it out of junk. Like this is really the most redneck, janky. I didn't have proper. I didn't have proper like anchor epoxy. I had liquid nails and will to build this foundation. This was like last year, and the linkage. This number. It's just a piece of wood and you get some mule tape. And yes, you can thing out of junk that works. But I'm trying to make a power hammer. It's not the easiest thing to see, but we made this this cam. This is going to be the drum, and then this right there is going to be the linkage. I just got to cut off an end so it'll be able to fit on a one pill bar ring. And then this here, this is why we got to organize the garage because everything's a mess. This right here is going to be the lever arm. Now, I'm not going to be making a health hammer. I'm going to be trying to make like self-contained hammer, but not self-contained like. But I want the hammer ram to be not exactly the one that we're using. I'm trying to make a bracket using these wheels, and I'm trying to make a guide. These rollerblading wheels. These things are really tough. I have some fat bitches on roller skates that the wheels weren't. They were not happy. And the great thing with using these is once I figure out how I'm going to have them all attached, because they are rolling, there is no oil. Because that's one of the things I don't like is, this is already a hazard enough thing doing blacksmithing. But if you've got oil that's like dripping onto your hot steel, and then when you're forging it, it vaporizes and you're inhaling that stuff, it's just giving you cancer. So if I can make something that doesn't use any lubrication and it just uses these bearings and make it so that these are replaceable, is I have this piece of square tubing which this fits over, and I could use some high density high molecular weight plastic, but I would still have to have some form of oil for the friction. But if I can make it so that I have these wheels attached to here, that way when the hammer ram is going up and down, it'll be able to actually guide the ram without having any oil. And because these are replaceable, and I got these off of Amazon, I could just buy a bunch of these and have that work. Also, if you guys are wondering, like I haven't been able to use it a ton, but I just got this from Harbor Freight. This is an air hose reel. There's like there's another piece of hose that goes to a valve. I just have like a little 20-gallon. I just have a 20-gallon air compressor that's down now. No, it's not making grilled cheeses at night. Not that kind of down. It's not working. But one of the things is, once I get that power hammer made, so this is the prototype of a knife. It's a little bit grimy because I had a wax coating on it, and but it's not rusted, luckily. But this is a Cocobolo handle. But what I like about it is it's actually tiny. I got big hands. But you can hold it like this. So then if you had to do combat, obviously I hope you wouldn't have to do combat. This could actually, if someone's fighting you, you can barely see that. So if they punch and miss, just like a karambit, I'm going to try to make other iterations of this where it actually will have a ring. So that way, you can have a Kydex sheath for your jean little pocket, or you can have like a belt sheath. So that way, if you have to, you can just grab it, and now you'll have quick access. You can still punch, and if it has a ring on it, if I make versions of this that has a ring on it, a finger ring, that way you could still open your hands for grappling, but you'd still have the knife attached to your hand. So, but I want to make a version of this out of Damascus, so that's why I'm going to be working on making the power hammer. So, and also, this is a forced air, non-welded forge. I'm going to be having videos out on the first version of this, which is the bolt together forge with the Venturi burner, which if you check on my channel, my latest video is how to build a simple Venturi burner out of like plumbing parts and other stuff. Go check that out, because this is the old burner. It still works. I'm just saving it, but you can see these ends are consumable because it's crusty and it's expanded because of the iron oxide reaction. But it works great. This whole setup works great as a Venturi burner, but using the same 8-inch nipple and reducers, and by adding a T and a 90-degree, you're able to have forced air, so that way you can save money on propane, because the less propane you use, but you still get all the BTUs, you're able to work longer and save money on propane. But it does have its own risk. If your power goes out, you have to be right near the forge, so you turn off the gas valve. That's why it has that gas valve. So if there's any emergency, you can just turn it off, and then you can turn off your propane tank. But if you guys got any questions, let me know. I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm also working on I built this post vise stand, a mobile one. Doesn't have wheels, but so you got your post vise, but I needed a stand. It is kind of wobbly, but not as bad as the other one I had. Got to add some supports on here because you can see this is not quite half-inch plate. It's kind of more like just under half an inch of plate. I'm going to try to add some pieces of flat steel and try to make it more rigid. But I made this using a cheap welder that I'm going to do a review on, because the first cheap welder I had blew up on me, and it scared. I almost shit my pants. So luckily this other welder that I got, that's like just under $100. It's a DC stick welder. I was able to weld this thing up. And what I love about this is it's literally a progression of welding, because like certain parts that I first started welding on in the project are atrocious. They work, but they're just, they got porosity and ass. But then other pieces actually work better. And I'm going to be doing a review video, trying to get you guys positioned. Sorry, this is jarring. I'm going to be doing a review video. That's the Wen 1x30 belt sander. I actually didn't start, when I started knife making and bladesmithing, I didn't have a 1x30 belt sander. I actually got lucky, and if you look over there, I got a 2x42 belt grinder, and that helped me start making my first knives, my first couple of knives. I then eventually upgraded to a professional one because I lost a family member and had money, so it's like, at least it's an investment. But non-alcoholic. You don't want to drink after having a surgery. I'm not going to be able to forge for a little bit because I got my defibrillator surgery. And if you are wondering, if you have a pacemaker defibrillator that's modern, like a newer one within like the past, like, always check with your doctor. But luckily I have the newest model of defibrillator that is MRI safe, and I actually can weld despite having a pacemaker defibrillator, as long as I'm not like right next to the welder. So that's nice because I'm able to make my own tools. And if you're a beginner and you want to know where you can buy cheap tongs for blacksmithing, tongs and cheap, those two words don't go the best together. You can buy like Amazon tongs, but they're made in China some weird place, and they're probably just made out of thin crap. You can go to Ken's Custom Iron. That's why these are ugly, because I made them. He sells, he plasma cuts a bunch of different tong blanks, and for the same price. So if you go on Blacksmith Depot, blacksmithingbdepot.com, they sell already forged tongs. They're really good quality. I actually have a couple pairs of them that I got at a yard sale. But those brand new are like 45 bucks. For slightly less than that, like 41 or 43 bucks, you can actually get a set of Ken's rapid tongs, Ken's Custom Iron rapid tongs or quick tongs. One of them is slightly different dimensions in terms of like how much you have for the range. I still have yet made my own pair of tongs. I'm going to be working on that when I can forge again, because I need to know how to do that. So that way, if I want to make my own tongs, I'll be able to do that instead of relying on pre-made blanks and YouTube tutorials. Those are still good, but if you can, make it. Also, if you're trying to get free blade material, so one of the things I learned early on with knife making is you can get free material like leaf springs or stuff in the scrapyard, but if you don't know exactly what it is, and even then with like leaf springs, I found a leaf spring on the side of the road. Go check one of my shorts. I found this half of a leaf spring. It was snapped in half. It was off of someone's truck. I didn't see the truck or hear anything. I just saw it in the road and I picked it out of the road so no one would get hurt. But when you have scrap steel, even if you have a rough idea, you still don't know if it has microfractures from stress or other things. So that's why if you go and buy either knife blanks or you go and buy, knife steel, I'm going to be doing a video on my top 5 places to buy knife steel for beginner knife makers, because I saw a video. One of the guys you should follow is Jason Knight. He's a master bladesmith. He was one of like the earlier judges on Forged and Fire. He was actually like a temporary judge, but he was all about form, factor, and the sexiness of the blade, which I loved. And he's like an artist. Like he makes beautiful work. But he said on one of his videos, yes, you can get stuff for free, but it takes more time to process. If you have the first time I was trying to forge on a piece of leaf spring, it was like 1/2 inch thick by 3 inches wide, and I spent 3 hours trying to hammer that thing into a big ass knife using my cold forge, and I just got a sore arm and like a slightly formed turd. So being able to get steel in the right size. So this is just a mild steel blank knife, but this is some 3/16 80 CRV2, or no, this one's 8670. 80CRV2 and 8670 are very close in chemical composition. 80CRV2 is known as Finnish saw blade steel. So in Finland, they're always cutting ice and other stuff. So this steel has vanadium and a couple other added metals that help make it hold an edge longer. So that's why like you're able to see people use saws and cut through ice and it doesn't dull too much because it has a lot of like abrasion resistance. But it's good to know that with this stuff you can actually heat treat it in a gas forge like the ones I showed you earlier, because all you really need, I gotta find it, give me a second. The thing is, it's here somewhere. There's always crap somewhere. One of the best things you can do as a beginner bladesmith, or if you're trying to heat treat other things that aren't knives, is a infrared thermal gun. It had, yeah. If I can find the damn. One. Dun, 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 dun. Just give me a moment. I can't find the damn thing. Can't find the one I've been using, which is concerning, but I'm going to be doing an unboxing and a review of this one. I had a different one. Now it is the one I do have is a discontinued model, but these infrared thermometers, these have an infrared laser that is able to detect the heat. So you can actually use this in your forge. Don't put it in the forge, but you aim it into your forge, or you're pulling your knife blade out and you have it at the right distance, you can actually read the temperature. I'm going to do an unboxing and review of this one because the previous one that I have, I still have it just somewhere in here. It's a discontinued model. It's from ThermalWorks, which they make like food grade stuff and HVAC stuff. For some reason, that model is discontinued. Like I didn't see any issues with it, but they discontinued it. But having one of these infrared thermal guns helps you give you a better idea, like, okay, this blade is this color of orange in my shop, and that's one of the things. If you have too much lighting in your shop, if it's too bright, or if you're forging outside, the more light pollution you have, the harder it is to determine the actual proper color of the steel. But I got to finish this. I got to make more of these. These are 1-inch forged dice. I cut them on my automatic hacksaw. I also have a video on that on my shorts. Sometimes you can get lucky on Facebook Marketplace and you can get old automatic hacksaws. They're nowhere near as fast as the automatic bandsaws, but because they're slow and more rigid, you can get fairly accurate cuts. So and I'm working on a prototype. This is my prototype knife bevel grinder. And it does work, but the layout of the holes, one side is slightly off. So like you grind the blade and the primary bevel is slightly different. Like it's still better than what I could do by hand, like more consistent. But I'm actually working on a 3D printable knife bevel jig, but you have to add steel to it because it needs a heat sink, and it also needs, just in case you're grinding and you miss, it would just tear right through the plastic. So you want to have the steel on that. So we're working on a bunch of stuff. It's just going to take time. Also, I got this piece of scrap copper. What do you guys think if I made a little bushcraft butcher knife / herb chopper? Because this has a nice curve where if I make it a little bit flat up front, you could chop through like chives and onions. But if I actually made this out of steel, like an actual proper knife steel, this would actually be like a comfortable like little bushcraft, little mini butcher's knife slash bushcraft herb chopper, but it would be tougher. I wouldn't call it bushcraft if it wasn't like made out of like 1/4 inch steel with like a nice forge or ground taper. So I'm going to work on making some of those. Now, the dollar store is an awesome choice for when you're doing blacksmithing and you want to have templates. So this is just a maple leaf. I kind of modified it a little bit to make it smaller so that the piece of steel would fit in my forge. But it's great because just say you want to trace out a shape and then cut it out on your bandsaw or you use your angle grinder. Just give me a second. I just got to grab the templates and show you. So I'm going to be making some copper flowers. This is a little cheap laser cut little daisy or whatever the heck this thing is. But I got a pack of these from the dollar store, and I have some pieces of copper. This is from copper pipe, and I was able to use it to trace and then cut out the design. And then this is just a thing from Halloween. This is like a pumpkin thing. I tried using a Dremel tool to carve trace the lines. Pumpkins have the groove lines. Didn't work out too good, but I got the basic shape of the pumpkin, so I can turn this into a pumpkin bowl. I made a spring fuller that'll be able to make the grooves in this. So dollar store is also your best friend. And I just realized, because I'm tired and I got ADHD, free steel. One good place is for free steel. If you go to auto shops, these are like bearing races. Not racists, races. These bearings, I don't know what vehicles this one's from. I just walked in to the shop and asked like the owner, like, hey, would you happen to have any scrap bearing races that you don't want? And he's like, yeah, I got a couple. And I was able to actually use one of these to make a bending jig so I could make cooking irons, because I want to make those. That way, if you go camping or in your backyard and you want to like hang like a Dutch oven or some form of pots, you can do that. But bearing races are nice because they're made out of 52-100. It's a high carbon steel. It's not an easy thing to heat treat for beginners. I haven't really messed with it yet. If you're not a bot, comment. If you're wondering, it is correct. No blacksmith shop is complete without a beer fridge. Do not. My advice is don't drink while forging. I was drinking non-alcoholic because I'm got a surgery I'm recovering from, so you don't want to drink after surgery. You want to heal up. But one of the woods that's really nice to work with, but you have to be careful because you can have an allergic reaction to it or develop one, is coco bolo. I got some free coco bolo years ago from a guy that I knew at my sportsman's club. This stuff looks and feels like it's treated with it's a little bit. It looks like it's treated with epoxy, but it's not. It's a really high oil, dense wood. It's really nice to work with. It looks beautiful when you have like brass or copper pins. It's like a really nice contrast. But you can have or develop an allergic reaction to it. So that's one thing to keep an eye out. The first ever blade shaped thing I ever forged, was this. It is crooked, but I learned from my old scoutmaster, Mr. Brian O'Coin. He invited me over to his personal shop and gave me beginner lessons, and that basically is what ignited my passion for blacksmithing and bladesmithing, because I used to live in an apartment with my mom, and I just had an attic. I couldn't forge anything, but once I moved in where I'm at now, I got a garage that I can use as a shop, and I could forge stuff. So it's always good to keep your first forgings, whether it's bladesmithing or blacksmithing, if it's something that you're not selling or giving away, even if it looks like ass, it's good to keep it, because that way, as you progress, as you get better, you're going to have failures. I have a whole drawer full of failures. But if you keep your first forgings, even if they're ugly and not perfect, nothing's perfect, you'll be able to see your progress. So I'm going to show you guys the first knife I ever forged on my own. So this is the first knife. This is literally just a piece of rebar. I heated this thing up in a wood fire. I had a hand pump that wasn't very good. It was literally meant to like fill pool floaties. I like duct tape a piece of metal pipe and stuck it in the fire. And I had a random chunk of like disc steel. And even though this thing isn't sharp, even though I ground it a little bit, it's the first thing. And I didn't have any blade control. And then the first handled knife that I actually have a wood handle on is this one. This is forged from a file before I got into proper blade steel. This, even though it looks ugly, my grandmother was able to use it to cut some tomatoes, but I felt embarrassed because of how ugly this thing was, and I kind of hid it from her. But this one is the first handled knife that I did, and it's ugly. The reason why it has so much of a curve is when you forge steel or forge anything, you're smushing the blade, you're making this thinner, it smooshes out this way, but then this side kicks up. That's why if you ever watch some people forge and make knives, they'll forge the knife to have a curve down, so as they forge that bevel, it kicks back up. So this is the first handled knife that I did. That was a full tang. I gave one of my friends one of my first hidden tang knives, and that was not the prettiest. But then with more practice, you get better. I got to finish this little chef's knife. This is a hidden tang chef's knife. And I got to clean it up. I got to do more hand sanding and clean up. I got some corrosion and stuff because I haven't worked on it in a while. But this is nice and thin. This is actually a failed Bowie knife because I tried forging a big Bowie knife, and when I was forging the tip, it just broke off and it didn't work. So I was able to regrind it, and then when I heat treated it, I was able to carefully grind it because you can see it's a very thin, and you can hear the but this was my first hidden tang chef knife that I still got to work on, but it feels nice in the hand. Obviously, because I made it from a previously broken knife or a knife that I couldn't make the right dimensions. I could only forge it this wide. Next time I would try forging it wider so it drops lower below the knuckle. So when you're rocking the knife, your knuckle or hand doesn't hit it. Obviously, I can hold up here too, because that's technically the right way for holding a chef's knife when you're rocking the knife. But we're gonna be working on having plenty of videos. Just gonna take time. Time is all we have. This one I gotta redo someday. Was my first attempt at a twisted Damascus. Low layer. My dad helped me forge it. But the handle, I didn't quite have enough material to have a proper handle, so it has a really ugly, weird handle. So I'm eventually going to do a video on taking this apart, and instead of making it an uncomfortable, thin, full tang, I'm going to take the handle off, and we're going to grind it a little bit, and we're going to make it a hidden tang into a piece of wood. But this is like a fat Tonto. It's a weird shaped knife, but it's the first twisted Damascus that wasn't entirely successful because there's like a void. There's a void right, it's kind of hard to see, right where my fingernail is. If I can, kind of hard to see. But basically it didn't forge well there, and you know, it could definitely still survive chopping and stuff, but this one I got to finish. This was my first attempt at a Persian style knife. The reason why it's all dirty and stuff because I had to wrap it in duct tape and hold it in my vise so I can hammer on the guard. I was originally going to sell it to a friend, but he backed out and wanted to buy it, so I didn't finish it. But I can redo the guard. I got to heat this up and take the solder off and redo it. But we got a lot of ideas. I've had to learn a lot of stuff the hard way through trial and error and figure out what tools are good for beginners and stuff, because there's so much stuff out there. You really don't need a lot to start bladesmithing and blacksmithing, but there are certain things that if you start with those tools, you have more of you'll have better outcomes with what you're able to make, and also you'll have more morale. So I got to do a review on a really inexpensive, cheap welder that's like under $100, because once you're able to weld, yes, welding is fabrication, it's not blacksmithing, but you're able to make your own tools. And being able to make your own tools, just say you have an old hammer that you got for $1 at a flea market, but you want to use it as like a tooling under your treadle hammer. Or, you know, you have a friend that's going to be a striker for you and want to use it as a striking thing. You can just weld on a metal handle or a piece of pipe, and there you go. Or if you're trying to make like a bending jig, actually, I'm going to turn this around proper. Gonna flip the camera. This whole forge and forge stand is all bolted together. There is no welding. But this right here, this little bending jig, my welds are crappy, but they hold and they work. This little bending jig is to make these. This is a paper towel holder. It's made from one piece of 3/8 round bar. I have my attempt of a little happy leaf, little Mary Jane leaf. Not the best, but it's my first attempt. But to get this bend, I was able to make this bending jig, and I have a bending fork, which I gotta find. But I was able to use the bending fork while this is hot and bend this to shape. And this is a scrap piece of 1/8 inch, a little piece of angle iron that I welded on just to keep this from going askew, and then some pieces of pipe. So having a inexpensive welder really changes your ability as a beginner blacksmith or bladesmith to make your own tooling, because it's like a night and day difference. Like you can literally, you know, like I made a video here. So this is the treadle hammer. I got to finish this, but this is my first ever candle holder, medieval style. There's no welding, there's just rivets, and then I took the piece of the pipe that I forged down into a small taper, and I was able to hot split it and use it as its own rivet. But to get this dish, I made a bottom tool that fits on Stompy the treadle hammer. And the welds are atrocious, yes they are, but they hold and they work. And this way, I can take my blanks, which are flat, like flatter than this, and I could put the blanks, this holes here, because I use a hole saw. I could probably get them water jet or plasma cut. It's just made out of some 1/8 inch steel. I might go thinner to make stuff lighter, but this is tough. And then I have a top tool that I was able to machine. Obviously, not everyone's going to start off with the lathe, but I was able to machine this because this had originally like a 1/2 inch hole. And that way this goes on top and it's able to make that set down. So you're able to actually, you're going on a journey. Sorry, I got a tripod, not a monopod. But you can see this actually pushes, it makes that bottom flat part. And this little divot I machined and welded to this, that makes it so that you have that little divot so that your candle can actually stick up. So having the ability to make your own tools is awesome. And it's pretty much, you can problem solve. Whatever you have, use it the best to your ability, and you'll be able to make cool things. And things that'll last longer than anything you can buy in the store. Like this forge, I have build videos out. I'm gonna be having build videos out, but if you check out my main videos, my long form videos, see that stand that this forge is sitting on? That's all bolted together. There is no welder. So I have a video on that. Of course, it's not the best video because it was when I first started making YouTube videos. I'm still not the best at this. You know, I'm learning how to do video editing, how to plan, build videos, because that's one thing that I learned is that trying to make something versus building something that you know how to make or you've made before, it's completely different from trying to make an educational video on how to build that thing and trying to figure out how to film everything or certain parts and then how to edit that down so that people get the idea, they're not lost when they're watching you, is really difficult. That's why I understand why like gaming or like reaction videos are super easy content to make on YouTube or Twitch or whatever stuff. Because literally, whatever is the funniest thing or the coolest thing that happens, you just edit that. But when you're trying to do a DIY video, trying to teach people how to make something, it is really difficult because you might know how to make something, but trying to film it with whatever equipment you have is not easy, especially if you have like just beginner tripods or cheap equipment like I do. Like I just got cheap stuff from Amazon. It's not easy. Luckily, I got this microphone. If you guys can hear me, please leave like a comment saying you can hear me, because no one seems to comment, and I'm just assuming you're all bots, but I'm still gonna keep talking because this is like one of the ways that I've been able to get more subscribers. Because my goal, besides to be able to do stuff like this full time, I want to make the coolest stuff. I want to make weapons from one piece. I want to make swords, but I am going to be trying to get into making short films. So, and I want to be able to have like do fabrication. So I eventually want to go from working in my garage to having like an actual fabrication shop where we forge, we fabricate tools for forging or other things. That's my goal. So if you guys subscribe and share videos that I post, that'll help. Liking, commenting, and subscribing, all that stuff will help, because I built that. And I have a video coming out on how to make this forge and how to convert it from Venturi burner to forced air. And I want to eventually be able to make forges that are more polished and professional to sell, and forge kits, because if you get into blacksmithing and you have the ability to make stuff, or you want to make stuff, kits are better, because that way you know how stuff goes together, but you save some money. Because like a fully assembled forge, like there's a company called Housemade. They're awesome. Go check them out. They have like a way more polished version of a bolt together forge that's professional and is a ribbon burner. This is just beginner. You can make it. If you don't like forging, you can just sell it or toss it out. What they sell is a professional product, but this you can make. So that's why I'm going to be working on using what I learned from making Stompy, the treadle hammer, to making a power hammer out of some scrapyard parts. I will say the best thing you can do, like before you try to make a power hammer as a beginner smith, before you try building a power hammer or buying a power hammer, unless you can get a really good deal, make a treadle hammer. Even though Stompy, this thing is very much, it is the ugly child that only a mother can love. And I love this thing, but my God, is it ugly and janky. Like I'm surprised it hasn't fallen apart yet. I mean, I did my best with what I had, but we're going to demonstrate why a treadle hammer is nice. So when you're like me, so a treadle hammer has a foot treadle, so a place where your foot goes, and you have a linkage, and the hammer's on a spring, and that way you can use the strength of your legs, your quads, your ass muscle is way stronger than your arms. Now, of course, making this as heavy as you can gives you more power, but a treadle hammer isn't about power. It's about, what's the rock song? It's about pride, it's about power. It's about time that we shower, I don't know. Treadle hammers, you can't make them heavy and powerful because you're just moving mass, but that makes it more difficult. So having it a decent enough weight where you can do some forging to flatten stuff, because you have control. You can either stomp something really hard and forge it, like this is just a bottle cap that was not flat. So you can do that, or if you're just trying to be more gentle, you have control. Because a power hammer, you have, some of them do have decent built-in control, but you can be gentle. Like, see, I'm just barely tapping this. And yes, you can hit hardened hammers with other hammers as long as whatever is underneath it is soft and deforming. Because, see, we're able to just gently dish that. Or you can go full throttle and stomp it. Stuff does fall off, so it can be kind of chaotic. But treadle hammers are great if you're trying to get into more serious with your blacksmithing. even bladesmithing, because this way, if you're trying to do like set downs on your blades or like curves. So I got to finish this for a friend. It's been way overdue. So just say you forge a rail spike knife, but you're not happy with the curve in here. You can take a, just give me a second. I got to find got a piece of round stock here somewhere. There we go. Just say you're trying to adjust the radius here. You know, you can, with a treadle hammer, take this. Obviously, this is a bit too small because the hammer would hit. I'll show you guys. The hammer will hit the actual blade. Obviously, I can move it over, but that's why having your own welder will help, because you could actually make a custom thing. But treadle hammers are awesome. This piece of copper, I was able to add these little leaf grooves using, this is just an old chipping hammer, but I was able to reprofile the edge. So if you actually look at it, it's dull. It's like a millimeter wide and it's rounded over. So that way it'll be able to put impressions in, whether it's copper or steel, and it won't break the, and it won't cut through. Like, you still can't hit too hard because you can cut through material. So this is just a piece of copper, but it's soft, so it kind of simulates hot steel. I want to flatten this because I put a divot in it and I want to take it out. And that does a great job. Now this treadle hammer is very loud. I can't really do much more because it'll piss off my grandmother and the neighbors, because it's attached to the wall and this whole thing's like a resonance chamber. But treadle hammers are awesome. Being able to make your own tools is awesome because there's so much problem solving. And if you're trying to get into woodworking, you can make your own chisels. Obviously, it takes time and figuring out like angles and stuff, but I made a wood turning tool for a friend of mine. He's an older guy. His name is Keith. He's a cool old dude. And he's retired. He used to be a plumber, but he taught me how to do my first turning. And he asked me like, hey, can you make one for me? Because he got some cheap high-speed steel. I do air quotes because all the stuff that you can get from Amazon will say high-speed steel or high-quality steel, but it's just cheap shit that barely works. So I said, yeah, I have a big bar of, give me a second. This is a 3-inch wide by 3/8 thick giant piece of 80 CRV2. This is awesome knife steel, blade steel. It holds an edge. And I was able to cut a piece from that and I was able to forge it. I didn't have the length I needed, so I was able to use a treadle hammer because it's able to keep things nice and square. Sorry, I got indigestion. And I was able to forge it flat and forge it square. So that's the nice thing with the treadle hammer, because I could forge it by hand and move the bulk, but any of like the little crappy wiggly bits from the hammer strikes, the treadle hammer was able to flatten and even it out. And I was able to heat treat the steel that I know how to heat treat because it's not mystery scrap steel. It's steel that I bought. Pop's Knife Supply, if you're really trying to get into knife making, even if you're not doing forging, but you're like stock removal, which I'm going to be having a video out the next coming weeks. because I still need like until the end of this month or into next month to heal, because my arm is still healing from surgery. But that way, I'm going to be showing you how to, using steel that we have known heat treating values, know how to get up the temperature, and we're going to be using an infrared thermal gun that you can easily get off of Amazon or other websites and get an accurate heat treat. Not super accurate, but this steel is forgiving enough that even if you have it slightly hot, 10 degrees hotter or 10 degrees lower, the grain structure is not going to be horrible, and you'll actually have the hardness that you're looking for. Now, one of the best things you can do for when you're trying to temper your knife steel, and I learned this through trial and error. I gotta move that. Sometimes when you're tempering your knives, they're nice and straight, but then you put them on the grill rack of a toaster oven, or you put it on the rack of your oven, and then it'll bend. This isn't the case. Like, this is a curved blade because I didn't finish forging it, but just say the blade was perfectly flat. And then because the heat is uneven, because ovens, they do give off good heat, but they'll be uneven, and the grill rack can actually mess with that because some parts of the grill rack will be hotter, some of it will be colder, so the steel will want to warp depending on the temperature. So one of the best things you can do is bring you guys over to my tempering oven. Get a dedicated toaster oven. You can get these. I got this one from a yard sale, but you can find these at Harbor Freight, not Harbor Freight, like Salvation Army or Goodwill. They might be dirty. You might have to clean the inside. But if you look in here, this is an oven thermometer. You hang this in the oven, or in my case, I put it on the plate steel, and it'll let you know exactly what the real temperature is inside, because the temperature on any oven, it might say, oh, it's 400 degrees or 450 degrees. These things are plus or minus 25 to 50 degrees more or less than what it says on the dial. So I actually tried making a Kydex sheath a while ago, and I did not have this in here, and I thought I had it at the right temperature. I come back into the shop, and there's just noxious fumes because it was almost to the point of burning, but not quite, because it was set at 300 degrees, but it was actually 350 degrees when I took my infrared thermal gun. So getting one of these oven thermometers will really help you dial in your tempering. So if you have, if you just say like you quench 80 CRV2 or 8670, they're both similar. 8670 is a little bit cheaper because it's made domestic and slightly different chemistry, and it's not from Germany. You temper it at 400 degrees for 2 sets of 2 hours, and you'll be able to bring it down from 65 Rockwell to like 60, 61, and you can actually play. So if you're trying to have it a little bit tougher for like a bushcraft night, you can cook it for longer or have it a little bit higher. But having this flat, this is a piece of 1/4-inch plate steel. It's not machined, it's not perfectly flat, but it is much flatter, and it is a big old heat sink. So once this registers the temperature, this whole plate is the proper temperature. So that way, when you put your knives on here, they won't want to warp because it's all one even heated surface, versus these grill racks, you put your knife on it and it might be hotter in the front or in the back, and then it'll want to curve, and that's how you get warpage. So having a nice piece of plate steel will help prevent your blades from curving, warping in the temper. So I hope that was some good pointers and tips for you guys. I luckily thank you guys that are joining the stream. I have more people watching now. But I am going to be wrapping things up because I'm tired and I got to get up early tomorrow because I'm doing stuff with a friend. So you guys be safe, have fun, make cool stuff, and just remember, enjoy making stuff. You're going to have failures, but you're not a failure. Just because you mess up doesn't mean you're a failure. You're a failure if you give up. But if you mess up, keep going. Write down in your notebook. I have like 20 different notebooks that I start working in them, but having a notebook is really key because that way you can learn from your mistakes. Like, okay, I was forging this knife and then everything seemed good. I had the oil preheated. I quenched it at the right temperature and I tempered the knife. But after hand sanding, I noticed there was a crack in it. Well, that's a brief summary of what you did, but you can actually try to remember back to everything like, okay, I quenched the knife, but I actually dropped the tip, or I actually poked the bottom of the quench tank with a knife tip while I was quenching it. That could be why you have a crack in it. So that's why writing down after you do a project of knife making or blacksmithing, writing down your notes like, okay, I did this, I got these results, I was happy or I was unhappy because, I was happy because I was able to get the shape that I wanted. I was unhappy because I had a crack form in it. Why did it crack? The only reasons why a knife would crack would be it's either you quench it in too cool of a fluid, so just say wintertime. You have your vegetable oil or motor oil. Don't use motor oil. Toxic stuff. You don't want to be breathing in those fumes. Just get canola oil, vegetable oil. You do have to replace it every once in a while, but it's cheap, it's available. You're not going to get poison from noxious fumes from it. I mean, look at like any Chinese restaurant. You look at the walls, it's stained with the oil. You see a newspaper that looks like it's from like the 50s, but if you look close, it's actually from like 2018, and it's just because it's absorbed the oil vapors from frying and stuff. People live a long time working in that kind of industry. It doesn't really mess up the lungs because it's organic and it's not toxic. So stick with vegetable oil, canola, palm oil. Don't really use peanut oil. I originally had peanut oil for forging or quenching longer knives, but you don't try to avoid that, having that in your shop, because I don't know, just say if you forge something afterwards, the oil could like cook on to the tongs. So then you grab something else and that could possibly make allergens go on to other stuff. I would love for a science experiment to see if when you season like a cast iron skillet where, you heat it up really hot and you have it cook on the oil. If you did that with peanut oil, how many times do you have to heat that up or use it for that peanut oil layer to wear out or to not make a person have any reactions? So that's something to think about. Stick with non-allergenic oils like canola oil or palm oil. Vegetable oil for quenching, you can use that, but if you have people that are sensitive to certain allergens, sometimes vegetable oil is cut with other oils that you don't know. So it's always good to know and research stuff. But notebooks are awesome. You keep a record of what you did, try to remember every step that you took, and then anytime you make a mistake, you write it down and you try to think back. You try to do some detective work on like, okay, my blade warped because why? Well, I quenched it in the oil instead of plunging straight up and down. You kind of put it in slightly at an angle and you kind of wiggled it like a fish tail. Well, when you're moving it in the oil, you're having fresher oil on this side and a force, and that'll curve the blade, and then it'll be curved from that. So there's a lot of things to consider. Make sure you guys subscribe. Check out my other long form and shorts on beginner blacksmithing and how to make stuff or how to do stuff. It'll help. Liking, subscribing, and sharing will help because I want to make cooler stuff. I've already said that before, but I want to get into some cinematic stuff. Maybe do a series on recreating scenes like from Lord of the Rings when they had the stupid broken sword that they hammered together. I have a cooler idea of how they could have done a more realistic thing with cooler magic. So be safe, have fun, make some cool stuff. Okay, how do I...